Two men, same city, same neighborhood, same school. They grew up 3 streets apart. They played on the same football team at 14. They both graduated in the same year. They both started their careers with nothing. Today, one of them is worth $80 million. The other is still waiting for payday. Same city, same start, same opportunities, completely different outcomes. Most people, when they hear a story like that, assume one thing. They assume one of these men got lucky. They're wrong. The difference between these two men had nothing to do with luck. It had nothing to do with intelligence, or talent, or who their parents were. It had nothing to do with money, because neither of them had any. The difference was invisible. It lived entirely inside their heads, and it started working, silently, invisibly, compounding quietly, long before either of them made a single dollar. In this video, I am going to show you exactly what that difference looks like. Not in theory, not in abstract philosophy. In the specific, concrete, daily decisions that separated a man worth 80 million from a man still living, paycheck to paycheck. And more importantly, I am going to show you where that difference lives in you right now. Because the most dangerous thing about a poor mindset is not that it is painful. It is that it feels completely normal. It feels like just the way things are. Like just who you are. Like it's just reality. It is not reality. And by the end of this video, you are going to feel that difference in your chest, not just in your head. His name is David. David grew up in the kind of household where money was something that caused arguments, not conversations. When a bill came in the door, the room got quieter. When something broke, the question wasn't how to fix it. It was whether you could afford to fix it. David learned 3 things about money before he was 10 years old. 1. There is never enough of it. 2. Wanting more of it is greedy. 3. The people who have it are either lucky or dishonest. Nobody told him these things directly. He absorbed them. The way children absorb everything. Through tone, through silence, through what the adults around him celebrated and what they resented. David was not a bad student. He was not lazy. He was not stupid. He was a child who was learning very efficiently exactly how the world worked. And the world he was learning about was not the whole world. His name is James. James grew up 3 streets away. His family was not rich. His father was an electrician. His mother worked part-time at a school. There were years when money was tight for James's family too. But something was different about how money was talked about in James's house. James's father used to say, "Money is a tool. It doesn't have feelings. It just goes wherever you direct it." James heard that sentence at 9 years old and filed it somewhere. Not because it changed his life immediately, but because it was a different frame. In David's house, money was an enemy, scarce, resentable, uncontrollable. In James's house, money was a tool, neutral, learnable, directable. Same city, same financial reality, 2 completely different mental models. Fast forward 30 years, David has worked hard his entire adult life. Nobody can say otherwise. He has worked at 5 different companies. He has been promoted 3 times. He earns a decent salary. And yet, every month, almost without fail, there is more month than money. James built a business from nothing at 31. It failed. He rebuilt. It succeeded. Then he built another. He has not been financially stressed in 11 years. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is not effort. The difference is not luck. The difference is 5 specific things that happened inside their heads every single day for 3 decades. 5 mindset differences. Let me show you each one. Here is the first and most important difference. When David thinks about money, he thinks in transactions. How much do I get? How much does it cost? Is this worth it right now? Every financial decision is a calculation, a trade, an exchange. When James thinks about money, he thinks about identity. Not how much do I get, but what kind of person builds the result I want. Not what does this cost, but what does the person I am becoming do in this situation? Here is what that looks like in practice. David sees a business book for $20. He thinks $20 is $20. I can find that online for free. James sees the same book. He thinks, if this changes one decision I make next year, it has already paid for itself 1,000 times over. This is not about the $20. This is about whether you see yourself as someone who invests in knowledge or someone who is watching every dollar leave. One of those identities compounds upward. One of them keeps you exactly where you are. Identity-level thinking means you are always asking, who am I becoming? Transaction-level thinking means you are always asking, What can I afford right now? Rich people are not constantly doing elaborate financial calculations. They made a decision, somewhere in their past, about who they were. And then they started living from that decision. That is the first difference. And it is the foundation that makes every other difference possible. Here is the second difference. And this one is going to be uncomfortable for some of you. When something goes wrong in David's life, financially, professionally, personally, his first instinct is to identify the external cause. The economy, his boss, the system, the neighborhood he grew up in, the opportunities he wasn't given. Most of the time he is not wrong. These things are real. The system is imperfect. The opportunities were not equal. But here is the problem. Acknowledging an unfair system and taking full ownership of your response to it are not opposites. They are both true at the same time. David knows the system is unfair, and that knowledge has become a reason, a completely legitimate reason, to not take full ownership of what happens next. James also knows the system is imperfect. He has said so many times. But when something goes wrong for James, his brain asks a different question within the first 30 seconds. Not who did this to me? What can I do about this? This is not toxic positivity. This is not pretending that injustice doesn't exist. This is a simple, ruthless, practical decision. The only variable I can control is myself. So that is the variable I am going to put all my energy into. Over 30 years, this produces completely different outcomes. Not because life was fairer to James, it wasn't, but because every unit of energy David spent identifying who was to blame was a unit of energy that didn't go into building something. Ownership is not a moral position. It is a strategy, and it is one of the most powerful strategies that people who build wealth have in common. Here is the third difference, and it is the one that most people understand intellectually, and almost nobody applies consistently. Every dollar you receive gives you a choice. You can consume it, spend it on something that improves your present, or you can plant it, direct it towards something that improves your future. David understands this. He has read about this. He would tell you right now that he knows he should be saving more and spending less. But in the moment, in the actual real, physical moment when the money arrives, the present is loud. The future is quiet. The present has feelings attached to it. It has textures and colors and the satisfaction of having something right now. The future is abstract. It is a number on a screen. It is a version of yourself who does not quite feel real yet. David does not have a willpower problem. He has a design problem. He has not built systems that make planting automatic. So every month, his emotions fight his logic. And emotions every month find a way to win. James does not have more willpower than David. James decided 11 years ago that he would never trust himself to make the planting decision in the moment. Because he knew, in the moment, the present would always feel more real than the future. So he made the decision once when his head was clear and automated it. Now 10% of everything he earns goes directly into investments before he ever sees it. He does not feel it leaving. He does not have to resist the temptation of spending it. It is already gone, already planted, already growing. Planting versus consuming is not about discipline. It is about designing your life so that the right choice happens automatically, rather than having to fight for it every single month. This is the one that people misunderstand most often. When I say that wealthy people think of their network as an asset, I am not saying they are manipulative. I am not saying they use people. I am not saying their friendships are transactional. What I am saying is this. James genuinely cares about the people in his life, and he also understands with full clarity that the quality of his life, his opportunities, his ideas, his access to resources is largely determined by the quality of the people around him. So he is intentional about who he spends time with. He shows up for people before he needs anything from them. He introduces people to each other without any personal benefit. He is genuinely interested at not performing interest, and over 20 years this has built something invisible and enormously valuable. A network of people who trust him, who remember him, and who think of him when an opportunity appears. David has friends, good friends, people who love him, but he has never thought of his relationships as something to invest in strategically. He shows up when it is convenient. He is warm when people are warm to him. And when opportunities circulate, they circulate among the people who have been intentionally cultivating those connections for years. Your network is not your contacts list. It is the depth of trust and goodwill you have built deliberately over time. Most people treat it like a social life. The people who build wealth treat it like a garden. You have to water it long before you need anything from it. The fifth difference is the one that determines whether everything else ever gets activated. David lives inside a mental boundary. It is not a wall. It is not a cage. It is a line in his mind that separates what is possible for someone like me from what other people get to do. And almost everything David does is unconsciously designed to stay on the safe side of that line. He does not apply for the promotion because he assumes someone else will get it. He does not start the business because he doesn't have the right background. He does not make the investment because he doesn't have enough to really invest. The fascinating thing about this boundary is that it is completely, totally invisible. David cannot see it. He would not describe himself as someone who is afraid of success. He would tell you he is being realistic. He would tell you he is being responsible. And that is what makes it so powerful. Because a wall you can see, you can climb. A limit you believe is reality. You don't even try to push. James is not fearless. James makes uncomfortable calls. He asks for things he is not certain he will receive. He starts projects he is not qualified for. The difference is not courage. The difference is a belief. The boundary of what is possible for me is not fixed. It moves. Every time I do something I have never done before, it moves. Every skill I learn, every risk I take, every relationship I build, the boundary moves outward. For David, the boundary feels like reality. For James, the boundary feels like a starting point. And that single difference, more than any financial decision, more than any investment, more than any piece of advice, is what separates a life that expands from a life that stays the same. Here is the question I want to ask you. Looking at those 5 differences, the identity, the ownership, the planting, the network, the expanding boundary, what is the single thing underneath all of them? It is this, where you believe the source of your life is. David, at a fundamental level, believes that his life is largely determined by what happens to him. The economy, the job market, the opportunities he was given or not given, the cards he was dealt. He is not wrong that these things matter. They do. But because he believes they are primary, he has unconsciously outsourced the direction of his life to circumstances he cannot control. James believes, at that same fundamental level, that his life is primarily determined by the decisions he makes in response to what happens. Same events, different response. Same economy, different strategy. Same starting point, different trajectory. Psychologists call this the difference between an external locus of control and an internal locus of control. It is one of the most studied variables in the psychology of success, and it predicts outcomes, financial, professional, health, relationship outcomes, with extraordinary consistency. People who believe their results come primarily from the outside. World tend to wait for the world to change. People who believe their results come primarily from the inside tend to change themselves until the results change. Over 30 years, the gap between those two approaches becomes $80 million versus a bus stop. I want to be careful here, because the most useless thing I could do right now is give you a list of 10 habits to implement by Monday. You have read those lists. You know what they say. And in 3 weeks, nothing has changed. Not because you lacked information, but because information alone does not change minds. What changes minds is a question. And I have one question for you. Where in your life are you waiting for circumstances to change instead of changing yourself? That is the David question. Not are you lazy? You are not lazy. Not are you stupid? You are not stupid. Just where right now are you outsourcing the direction of your life to something outside yourself? Is it the economy? Your employer? Your industry? Your city? Your background? Your age? Every one of those things is real. Every one of those things has affected you. And not one of them is the source of what happens next. That source is you. Here is the shift. It is not a habit. It is not a morning routine. It is not a formula. It is a single decision that you make. Not once, but every morning when you wake up. The decision is this. Today, I am the primary variable, not the economy, not your boss, not your past, not your background. Today, just today, I am the primary variable. What I do today is more important than what the market does today. What I learn today is more important than what I was taught 10 years ago. Who I become in the next 12 months is more important than anything that happened in the last 12 years. David and James stood at the same starting line. The difference between them did not happen in a single dramatic moment. It accumulated, quietly, daily, in thousands of tiny decisions that each felt completely ordinary at the time. Which book to buy, which question to ask, which risk to take, which version of themselves to practice being. The starting line you are standing at right now is not the finish line. And the person you are today is not the person you are locked into being. The mind you carry determines the life you build. And the mind is the one thing you can actually change. The question is not whether you could think like someone who builds wealth. You are doing it right now. You are here. You are asking the right questions. The question is whether you will still be asking them tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because that, more than intelligence, more than talent, more than the family you were born into, is the actual difference. I want you to do one thing before you close this video. Not tomorrow, right now. In the comments below, finish this sentence. The area of my life where I'm waiting for circumstances to change. Instead of changing myself is, that is it, just finish the sentence. Because the act of naming it, of putting it in words, is the beginning of owning it. And owning it is the beginning of changing it. If this video made you stop and think, if something in here felt uncomfortably true, then this channel is for you. Every week, I bring you a story or a framework that gives you a real, honest, non-surface level look at what separates the people who build exceptional lives from the people who settle for ordinary ones. Not to judge the ordinary, not to worship the exceptional, but because you deserve to understand the actual mechanics of the life you are capable of building. Subscribe to Success Theory, and I will see you in the next one.